So Ron Paul is confronted by Megyn Kelly, who is a superb lawyer and a superb host. On Fox News today, Mediaite, hat tip, cut 9, go.
And what you said was, quote, think of what happened after 9/11. The minute before there was any assessment, there was glee in the administration because now we can invade Iraq. Do you really believe, Congressman, that there was glee in the Bush administration after 3,000 American citizens died?
They might not describe it that way, but there was a lot of pleasure.
All right, stop. They might not describe it that way? What do you mean they might not describe it that way? Now, ladies and gentlemen, the guy's off his rocker. Say what you want about George Bush and that administration. This is an outrageous smear, a blasphemous smear of these folks and the United States military. And I'm sick and tired of sitting back and saying, you know, I like Ron Paul on domestic issues, but on foreign policy, he's a schmuck. He's a crackpot. And I'll put up my positions on domestic issues and Russia's position on domestic issues and Sean's position on domestic issues. I'll put Milton Friedman's position on domestic issues and Bill Buckley and all the rest to Ron Paul's. And yet none of them, nobody in their right mind would say what you just heard. I want you to rewind this, Mr. Producer, because this guy could win the Iowa caucus and hang into this primary all the way to the end with hopes of giving a big speech at the convention and then claiming victory as he rides off into the sunset. Go.
And what you said was, quote, think of what happened after 9/11. The minute before there was any assessment, there was glee in the administration because now we can invade Iraq. Do you really believe, Congressman, that there was glee in the Bush administration after 3,000 American citizens died?
They might not describe it that way, but there was a lot of pleasure. The neoconservatives, even years before this, were looking for an opportunity. This doesn't mean they had glee about 9/11. That's a total misinterpretation. They had pleasure in knowing that they had an excuse now to do what they've been wanting to do for so long. And what did they do? They marched into Iraq based on lies. There was no Al-Qaeda, no weapons of mass destruction.
So where, stop. Let's assume all of that's correct, just for argument's sake. Then the president should have been impeached. Right? If a president goes into a war with glee, wants an excuse because he's a neocon, wants to go to this war, and then lies about it to Congress, lies about it to the American people, does so with forethought and intention, conspiring against the government, his own government, and conspiring against the American people to fool them into a war, did Ron Paul seek his impeachment? No. Instead, he puts this crap out now because, in many respects, these battles are unpopular because they've gone on a long time. He's an opportunist. And then he tells you he didn't say what he said. This is a perfect Ron Paul example. He says things and then says he doesn't mean what he said, or you misinterpreted what he said. I know exactly what he said. I just don't see how somebody can be labeled a conservative. If you really put it to Ron Paul, he'll tell you he's not a conservative. Because he's not. I mean, folks, Tea Party activists, conservatives out there, there's an effort underway to weaken this nation from within by different factions. We have the Emeritopia faction that wants to use the federal government to destroy this society. But there are other factions, too. There's another faction. And that other faction is more anarchy than anything else. And they want to promote something that's alien to this nation, too. Now, we can embrace constitutionalism, and we must. We can embrace free markets, and we must. But we don't have to open the front door to our enemies, do we? We don't have to pretend that but for us conquering the world and provoking certain people that we wouldn't be under attack? I don't know. Do you really believe, ladies and I know most of you don't, but the flat earth dead-enders out there, you really believe that if we unilaterally disarm, if we cut our military by 50%, I think he's proposing something like that, withdraw all our bases, including from allied lands, that our enemies will lay down their arms and they won't attack us? I'm not going to do this the whole show, but somebody's got to do a throwdown here, and it'll be me. On September 14, 2001, the House of Representatives voted on H.J. Resolution 64, the bill title to authorize the use of United States Armed Forces against those responsible for the recent attacks launched against the United States. Now, presumably that would include Afghanistan, Al-Qaeda, the Taliban. Ron Paul voted for that resolution. I said he voted for it. Then on March 10th, 2010, he goes on to the House floor. He said that resolution was an illegal transfer of power to the president. Now, maybe I'm not sharp enough to figure this out. So he voted for an illegal transfer of power to the president? Oh, I'm sure he'll be twisting it and spinning it. And, oh, I didn't mean that. I meant this. Anyway, I thought you'd want to know. And I believe our war effort deserves a lot better than this guy. He was way out there. Well, I like his domestic policy. Yeah, I do. There's a lot about his domestic policy, but that's not an excuse to ignore his foreign policy. And let me suggest this, we conservatives, we Tea Party activists. What are we going to run on? Legalize drugs, legalize prostitution, and cut the defense budget by 50%? Is that our agenda? I don't think so. I don't think so at all. It's not our agenda. It's not to say you don't support certain aspects of these different things. That's not my point. My point is he's not a conservative. He's not a constitutional conservative. That's my point. He has a lot of good proposals when it comes to cutting spending. So do a lot of people. He didn't invent them. Conservatives have been fighting that fight, writing about it, talking about it for 100 years.